Alright, let's talk about Sean O'Malley because after what we just saw, it kind of feels like we're hitting a turning point. I mean, let's just call it what it is. He got dominated. Straight up, I didn't even need to check the scorecards because they didn't matter. Merab finished him in the third round, and even before that, it was one-way traffic. I'll give some people the benefit of the doubt if they want to say Sean looked alright in round one, but after that, it was all downhill. Merab just ran through him, and not in a fluky way either. It was clinical, okay? Let's be real. And here's where it gets even more disappointing, man. This wasn't Sean O'Malley's first shot at proving that he's the guy. This was his second opportunity to really cement himself as the undisputed king of the division. The first time around, he hit the jackpot straight up. He flatlined Aljamain Sterling, who at that point had a real argument for being the greatest bantamweight of all time. That was huge, that was a moment, and honestly, I'll give him his flowers. It takes real timing, real precision, and real confidence to do that to a guy like Aljo. But after that, things got a little bit sketchy. He defended the belt against Chito Vera, and look, it was a good fight. Both guys came to scrap, and Sean clearly showed improvements from their first meeting. He outclassed Chito, plain and simple. But the issue isn't the fight, it was the matchup. Chito didn't really earn the title shot. Let's be real, he was ducking Merab the whole time. The only reason he got that opportunity was because of the storyline. He beat Sean the first time, Sean called it a fluke, and the UFC leaned into this narrative that was all built in history. So even though Sean won the fight clean, it still felt more like a formulaic than a real title defense. It didn't feel like he's gone through a true number one contender. Then came Merab finally, and Sean didn't just lose, he got steamrolled. It wasn't a close fight, it wasn't a learning lesson, it was a beatdown. And the worst part, Sean had a bunch of excuses afterwards. He couldn't just own it, and yet somehow he gets an immediate rematch. A lot of fans didn't think he deserved it, and honestly, neither did I, but the UFC gave it to him anyways. And guess what? He still lost. And at this point, you gotta ask the hard questions, because when you got two cracks at Merab's and you come up short both times, the elite status starts to slip. And yeah, Sean could still beat a lot of these guys in the top 10. I'm not taking anything away from him. But when we're talking about the top of the mountains, the real killers in the division, after the second letdown, it ain't sunshine and smooth jazz anymore, okay? So now what? That's the $1,000,000 question, am I right? Because let's be honest, Sean isn't washed. Far from it. You line him up with the most of the top 15, and I still think he beats a good chunk of them. He's still got that sniper-like striking, he's accurate, he's got the range, and when he's the hammer, not the nail, he looks elite. But we've seen now that against a relentless grappler with cardio for days, he folds. And not in a he had a bad night kind of way. It's just a stylistic nightmare. And Merab has his number. There's no other way to say it. And that's where it gets interesting, because what are we supposed to do with a guy like that? Let's say Sean goes on a run, he beats Rob Font, Pedro Munoz, but this time decisively, maybe even take out someone like Song Yadong. Cool, but what happens when Merab's still sitting there with the belt, or even Umar Nurmagomedov or Corey Stanhagen steps up and presents the same smothering grappling puzzle? You're just gonna hit the same wall all over again. So here's a thought I've been holding on to for a while, and now that we've seen how things have played out for Sean O'Malley at the bantamweight division, maybe it's time to seriously consider a move up to 145. And look, man, I'm not saying he walks into the featherweight division and starts piecing up Alex Volkanovski and Mazvar Evelev. That division is stacked, no questions about it. It's a shark tank, but sometimes you hit a wall in a certain weight class and the ceiling becomes more about your body than your skill set. And that might be where Sean is right now. We've never seen him at the featherweight division, so it's all speculation, but let's be real, the writing's kind of on the wall. The cut to 135, it can't be easy for a guy this size. He's 5'11", walks around somewhere between 155, 160 in the offseason, and you can tell he's got that lanky, wired frame. That's a lot of weight to shred consistently. And if we're going to be honest, his last few performances have shown signs that maybe a toll of that cut is catching up to him, especially when it comes to the physically and grappling exchanges. Now, think about this. At 145, Sean might actually be stronger. He wouldn't be draining himself the same way just to make weight. He could potentially come in with more muscle, better durability, and maybe even more cardio since he's not burning himself out before the fight even starts. The 10 extra pounds could allow his striking to carry more pop, more snap. Maybe, just maybe, it helps him hold his own a bit in the clinch and on the ground, where guys like Merab were clearly bullying him. And here's another thing people need to talk about. Sean's only really faced two grapplers at the top level, Aljo and Merab, and in both fights, especially in the Merab fight, it was clear that there was a physicality gap. With Merab, you could just see the strength difference. Every clinch, every scramble, every takedown, it wasn't just technical dominance, it was raw horsepower. Sean couldn't match it. And here's the thing, he hasn't even fought someone like Umar Nurmagomedov yet. Umar might not be the strongest guy at 135, but I guarantee you he'll still be able to hold Sean down. Even someone like Corey Sandhagen, who isn't known as a powerhouse, could probably control Sean just based on the frame and the leverage. He's long, rangy, and way more physical than people give him credit for, I would say, because that's been the theme in Sean's tougher matchups. When someone can close the distance, grind on him, and mix in the wrestling, they start to unravel. Not because Sean isn't skilled, his striking is high level, but physically he just doesn't stack up with the strongest guys at 135. He just doesn't. That pressure style snowballs on him. He can't create space, he can't get his rhythm going, and once you take away his ability to move and snipe from the outside, it's a whole different story. Now at 145, maybe that changes. That division has some matchups that are way more style friendly. Not every contender up there is like a Merab or an Umar, clone. There are some strikers, guys who are willing to stand with him. Yeah, it's a dangerous division, but it's got more variety in my opinion. And maybe, just maybe, at featherweight, Sean finally gets to fight on even footing, physically, athletically, strength-wise, because if he stays at 135 and keeps running into these chain wrestlers with insane cardio and freak strength, it's gonna be a long night every time. And honestly, a change of scenery could be refreshing for Sean. Sometimes after a big loss, especially when it's the second time you've been dominated in a title fight, the best move isn't to chase a trilogy or grind your way back up to the same ladder. Sometimes you pivot, sometimes you evolve, and maybe the next chapter for him is at featherweight. And to be honest with you guys, we don't know if he's going to be elite at 145, but we won't know unless he tries. And after everything we've seen lately, it might be the smartest gamble he can take right now. And look, I know I already touched on this earlier, but it really can't be overstated. This move to featherweight isn't about finding easier paths, it's about tapping into something new, because right now at 135, Sean's stuck. We said Merab's a roadblock, and even if you take him out of the equation, there's still a line of guys ready to drag Sean into those same gritty, uncomfortable fights where he struggles to shine. That grappling, heavy pressure, we've seen it twice now. That's the blueprint out there. But featherweight, that's a new sandbox. It's the division where Sean might not be the biggest, but he won't be cutting himself to the bone every camp either. He could add some strength, keep that length, and potentially build a version of himself that doesn't get outmuscled the moment things hit the clinch. And more importantly, it's a place where fresh matchups could light a fire under him again. And that's really the whole point, man. It's not even about hating on the guy. It's just what are we really doing here at 135? You're not going to be the guy. You're not going to beat Merab. He's sitting at the top. Not even with killers like Umar, Corey, and even other ones lurking. It becomes more and more obvious, crystal clear. So why stay stuck? At least go to 145. You've got a shot to reinvent yourself. You can reset, maybe even get more motivated. Start chasing new names, new matchups, new purpose. And we can have some badass matchups. I'm talking about real fights, real excitement, real energy. Let's just start with Gene Silva. Tell me that fight doesn't get the fans buzzing. Gene's young, explosive, and he has that finishing ability that makes every exchange dangerous. But here's the twist, he's not just a reckless brawler. People think that he's wild because he's flashy, but if you actually watch him fight, you notice he's calculated. He doesn't throw unless he sees openings. He picks his shots, and his defense, while not perfect, is tighter than you expect from a guy with his highlight reels. And that's why I think he beats Sean, because stylistically, he's not going to give Sean the openings Sean usually thrives on. He's not going to overextend or charge in like a rookie. He's patient, he reads patterns, and he has real knockout power. Then you've got Diego Lopez, another banger of a matchup, and honestly, one of the most entertaining stylistic tests for Sean. Diego's got that chaotic energy. He's flying all over the cage, throwing unorthodox attacks, and hunting for submissions the second he hits the mat. But here's the thing, his grappling is wild, not always systematic. He scrambles hard, but he takes chances. And Sean, for all his defensive flaws, is very good at keeping the fight standing when he's dialed in. Plus, Sean's hands are sharp if he can avoid the takedowns or at least stay out of those wild transitions. He can pick Diego apart and either edge him out on the scorecards or catch him with something clean mid-exchange. It's risky, but it's a winnable fight. And more importantly, it's fun. Now, if we're talking about Alex Volkanovski, look, I already said it once and I'll say it again. I don't think Sean would win that. That's no disrespect to Sean. That's just acknowledging the greatness of Volk. Volk is one of the most disciplined, battle-tested fighters in the game. He doesn't give you anything for free. His pressure, his pace, his ability to mix it up, it's too much. And unless Sean develops a serious anti-wrestling toolkit and ups his physicality, that's a nightmare matchup. But even so, imagine the build-up, the promos, the headlines. If Sean wins a couple fights at 145, calls out Volk, that's box office. And then there's Arnold Allen, and that one's interesting. Allen is very solid everywhere. He's strong, durable, composed. But stylistically, he's not the kind of guy who overwhelms you. He doesn't pour on volume, and he's not smothering grappler either. He's technical, calculated, which means Sean Sean can thrive in that kind of fight. If Sean can keep it clean and technical, fight behind the jab, manage distance, and avoid the big moments, he could absolutely outpoint Arnold. That's one of the most realistic name wins Sean can get at 145. It would turn heads. And if we're going to talk about names that really elevate Sean's stocks with a win, bro, how about Yair Rodriguez? Now that's a fight that would make the fans go wild. Yair's flashy, unpredictable, and super creative with his kicks and movement, but Yair is also vulnerable to range strikes and can get struck when he's forced to play on the outside game. Sean wouldn't be looking to brawl or turn it into a wild scrap. He'd be looking to stick and move, use that footwork, and touch him up with straight shots. It's crazy, stylistic clash, and honestly, it might be one of the most entertaining matchups Sean could ever take. And the list just keeps going on, man. You got a potential rematch with Aljamain Sterling if Aljo fully makes the move to the featherweight division. Imagine the narrative there. Sean tries to redeem himself, prove that the first fight wasn't just a one-time thing. Then there's the Brian Ortega fight, who's always been hanging around the top of the division, another slick grappler, tough as nails, and the kind of name that still carries weight with the fans. Stylistically, it's tricky, but a winnable fight if Sean can keep it on the feet. You've also got Kelvin Kattar, one of the cleanest boxers at 145. That would be a high-level striking clinic. Two dudes standing in the center, playing chess with their hands. It doesn't get more fun than that. The options are just better. There's variety, there's excitement, and there's fresh batch of matchups that might actually motivate Sean again. Because let's be real, bantamweight, the door is closing. He's not going to be the guy at 135. Like, yeah, sure, you can run it back with Peter Yan someday. That'd be fun, no doubt. But even if he wins that, it doesn't change anything. He's still in a division ruled by a guy who just grinded him into the mat. And at featherweight, though, at least there's hope. I'm not saying that he becomes the champion. I seriously doubt it, to be honest. But the sport is unpredictable, man. You string a few wins together, catch a contender on an off night, land that right shot at the right time, and suddenly you're in the conversation. And that's all it is. A fresh start, new matchups, more fun, less pressure to be the face of the division, and more just freedom just to fight. Featherweight might not be the easier option, but it just feels like a better fit, in my opinion.